Would you like to know more about being your true authentic self and what it's been like for myself and for somebody else that's very special that I'm interviewing in this episode? Well then, keep watching. In today's episode number 113, we are going to talk to Chamonix Higginson. Yes, that is right. There is not only Chamonix to Blanche, but also Chamonix Higginson. And I'm very excited to share with you her wise words that she's brought to us for this episode. And just hearing all about her journey of how she came to where she is, which is also in Australia, and how she got her name and all these very interesting things that I thought that you guys would like to listen to as well and find out more. And then before we do that, it's really important that you remember to join the most exciting community on the internet if you wanted to migrate to Australia. If that's something that you have in mind, then please come and join us at Migration Made Easy. And that is a place where we will support you and propel you in your journey to come over to this country, which is an amazing place to come and live. Hop on to chamonixtv.com.au/register. And that's where we'll learn much more about how you can land your first Australian job sooner. We'll save you time, we'll save you money, and we will just help you make this really hard journey that much easier. All right, let's hop into the episode. Hi Chamonix, welcome to the channel today. It is so exciting to have you here with me, and it's Chamonix 1 and Chamonix 2, or Chamonix 2 and Chamonix 1 and Chamonix 2. How are you, darling?
I'm really well. I'm so excited to be here and to be doing this.
It's been actually a long time coming. When did we meet each other? How long ago? Can you remember?
It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was quite. Yeah, it was a while ago. And we were kind of juggling small children and life and just kind of, I remember someone tagged you in one of my posts on social media and said, hey, there's another Chamonix.
That's right.
And I had never met another one before. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, I also went like, what? There's another Chamonix in this world and it's spelled exactly the same. That's incredible.
And in the same city as well. Like, how funny.
That's right. We were both living in Perth at the time. Incredible. So please share with us, how did you get your name?
Well, my parents I'd probably describe them as being original. So I have brothers who have very normal names, but my mother has a background, like French background, in her family line. And so for some reason, my dad decided that he wanted to give the daughters French names. And so I was the last child, and I'm not sure why or how Chamonix came about, but I think they liked the fact that it was French, that it was different, and that there was, the silent X at the end. It was, I'm not exactly sure, but I can't say I was thrilled about it growing up, because as life had it, I was born in South Africa, but then grew up in France, and, that was a little bit tricky. But it just happened because they wanted to give me a name that was anything but ordinary, I guess.
It certainly is not ordinary. And so I know you are not ordinary either, which is the topic that we will touch upon in a second. But you were born in South Africa, and then you left South Africa. How old were you when you left?
I was 2.5.
And where did life then take you?
Well, first of all, we sailed all the way from Cape Town to Europe, and took quite a bit of time, I think 18 months or so, to really taking our time getting to Europe. we lived in the UK for a couple of years and then moved to France. So, and then we moved around many times in France, from near the Swiss border to mainly Burgundy is where I grew up.
And
so yeah, I spent 20 years
French.
there. Yes, I do.
Wow. Okay. And before I forget, so what's your sister's name?
My sister passed away, but her name was Martinique.
Oh.
And actually, now that I think of it, I think she initiated it because my grandfather's name was Martin, and both of my mum's sisters have Eek in their name. They were Angelique and Veronique. So Martin Eek was kind of a combination of all of them. Okay. And then I guess that was the first French name, and then I just got the next one.
You don't have another name, hey? It's only Chamonix, or do you have a middle name as well?
My middle name is Michelle. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And well, that's pretty French as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. So then you lived in France and you pretty much spent most of your, I want to say, growing up years there. How did Australia come into the mix then?
Well, that was much later in life, when I actually studied to become an interior designer. And I did a lot of the, it's interesting now when I look at what I do, and it's very much like around, human behavior and all of that. The one thing that I loved about human design was psychology of space. And so what I did was more planning out spaces for well-being rather than decoration. And it was at a time where the GFC had hit Europe. So all of the architects were losing their jobs and they were taking over. It was interior architecture that I studied. And so really the only way for me to continue kind of building my career was to go somewhere else. And at the time, I really believed that Australia had a lot more sustainable design and kind of like was a little bit progressive in the way that they were building and designing. And so that was ultimately why I wanted to come to Australia. And it was all planned out. I postponed my trip by 1 year. And a few months before coming out, I met the man who then became my husband. By like absolute, just, one of those kind of coincidences that you look back later and go, interesting how that all played out.
Is he Australian?
Yes, he's Australian.
Okay, so you met him in France and you happened to like the architecture and the way Australia was doing things, and then you met your husband. It's very, very coincidental, not?
Yeah, it's funny how life plays these little tricks on us, isn't it?
Yes, I love it, and this is something we'll talk about a little bit more. But at that point in time, when things happen with you or to you, I used to think that things happen to me, but now I believe that things happen for me. But that's
absolutely.
And when you feel that things happen to you, you're like, oh, why is this happening? I don't understand it. And often it goes along with a lot of pain and heartache and confusion. And it isn't until months, maybe years later, only that one realizes, well, there was actually a very good reason, and it happened probably more for me than to me. But when you're in the middle of it, oh man, it hurts.
Yeah. I think that's the point really, right? We're in this human experience and we don't understand the bigger picture. But if we can just kind of trust the process and trust that all we need to do is just take that next step and not try and micromanage every aspect of our lives and just kind of just allow things to play out. There's a wonderful kind of just magic that intertwines through all of our aspects of our lives. It's wonderful. But yeah, it's great to look back on it and notice that. But while you're in the trenches, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's quite not so pleasant at that point in time. But I'll just put some perspective behind the story before we can, because there's a number of things for our viewers watching. Chamonix and I have got a number of things that we would think might be interesting to chat about, just that it's similar for us in our lives and how we have experienced certain things that's happened. But what I'll try and do is I'll I'll ask Chamonix her perspective, and then I'll sort of give my version of how life has treated me. And then you can, as the viewer, can, I hope, see how interesting it is that we've had very different but very similar lives. Coincidentally, you see, that word comes back again. So how I got my name is my dad traveled to Europe 8 years before I was born, and he went obviously through the Mont Blanc tunnel, as you do when you travel Europe. And as he got through, he saw this little town at the bottom of the, on the other side, and the town was called Chamonix. And he immediately fell in love with this beautiful little town on the foot of the Mont Blanc, with the snow-cut mountains. And it's just, and he thought one day, if he is lucky enough to have a daughter, then he would love to call her Chamonix. And so I was born 8 years later, and my mum, I remember my dad telling me that when I was born on the, in hospital, when it's now time that you've got to go and register the name, my mum is like, no, I want her to have my names. And my mum has some very traditional names. My mum is Susara Maria Sofia. And she's like, oh, she wants me to have her names, and maybe they'll call me, I think, Sumari for short, Susara Maria Sofia Sumari. And my dad's like, oh no, and off he went, because my mum was still nurturing me, and off he went to go and register me, and he registered me as Chamonix, and that's it. So Chamonix it was, and my mum then grew to love the name very quickly. But yeah, so that's how I got my name. It's very interesting, and you and I are 6 years apart in age, so we're very similar. I'm the little older one. And yeah, it's interesting. Born in South Africa as well. I just spent all of my childhood years in South Africa, and then came to Australia at the age of 26. So how old were you when you then got
pretty much the same, actually? I was around that age, 26, 27 maybe.
Wow, interesting. And so we both landed in Perth.
Which was not my plan. I was planning on being on the East Coast, but my husband happened to be, from Perth. And so I came over and fell in love with Perth. So I went briefly to the East Coast, but I came back. It's such a beautiful place to be.
Was he okay with you saying, Perth it will be?
Yeah. He was, quite keen for me to stay.
So tell me about Australia and what you love about living in Australia. I hope that you love Australia. I don't know. And are you citizens now?
I'm not a citizen. Considering it. I am considering it. And there's so many aspects that I love about Australia. But I think the first one that I noticed was growing up in Europe, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of, I believe, a lot of generational trauma that has happened to the people, but also to the land. There's been so many wars, and so, there's been, people have starved, people have been through like horrific things on the land. And I believe that we carry that through generations. And I didn't realize that living there. But when I moved away, I remember feeling so light. And I felt that the people that I was interacting with didn't have that heaviness about them. And so it was, I'll be totally honest, when I left Europe, I left a lot of trauma behind, a lot of sadness. And, I was trying to run away from all of that and come to sunny Australia and just start over. And you can't really escape from yourself, right? You have to go and sort out your stuff at some point. But when I first arrived in Australia, it felt so easy, and so just everything, it just felt like my body was relaxed in a way that I hadn't been able to achieve in Europe. And everyone had this really optimistic view of life, and everything was a little bit light. There weren't those deep, heavy philosophical conversations that, interestingly enough, I grew to miss in the first couple of years of living here. But it was just this, there's something about sunny countries where it's just sunny all the time, and also where it's hot, people have to just move a little bit slower. And I believe that there's also kind of like a relaxation that comes with that. And I think that's the first thing that made me really fall in love with the Australian people, is that kind of like that attitude of like really being laid back and, that she'll be right kind of, Whereas I was like, no, well, wait a minute. Like I'm used to being around people who are neurotic and stressed all the time. Like this is quite a holiday.
It is very different to get used to it. Coming from South Africa, having grown up there all my life, maybe in the first few years when I was primary school age, things were not as stressed up wasn't that obvious. But throughout my high school years, it became much more evident, and things just became so much more dangerous over that period, and increasingly dangerous as the years passed. And we had that similar kind of heaviness that was on us, but you don't always realize it while you're in it. And so I fled, in my view, I fled to Australia because I was personally scared of being murdered every single day of my life at that point in time, at 26 years old when I left. It probably started becoming very obvious to me from about the age of 20 that this is not going to be the place where I could continue on living, and break-ins and murders and killings was just becoming the order of the day there. And obviously managed to come to Australia, and it was almost immediate as when I put my feet down on Australian soil, how I felt a sigh of relief. Literally, it felt like I'd thrown off extra baggage, like 22 kilograms or whatever that you can carry on your back. It feels like I threw it off, and it was just such a different surrounding. People, as you say, people are less stressed. People are much more slower paced, granted. I think in general, things are a bit more slower paced in Australia. And it's all that she'll be all right, mate kind of attitude. And, tomorrow's another day, and let's relax and let's look after you first. And are you okay? It's much more about that work-life balance, or that life-life balance, shall I call it. I definitely agree that for different reasons. I mean, you came from Europe and I came from South Africa, and we both had that sense of relief, which is interesting. And around the same age as well.
Yeah.
26 each. So you now have a little family. How many kids do you have? Share with us their names, please, and how old are they?
I have two, and I used to end that sentence with too many, but I no longer do that. My son is 7.5, and my daughter is nearly 6. Their names are Dexter and Jade, and they, to be honest, when I was younger, when I moved to Australia, I wasn't even sure that I wanted children. I didn't particularly like children. I mean, a little bit. Sometimes they were cute, but they happened in my life very much by accident. By accident. It was more like we got engaged and had a bottle of champagne or 3, and then just, ended up making a baby accidentally. But it's it was the most beautiful experience in becoming a mother, and it gave me the opportunity to really kind of come back to myself. But as we were talking about a little bit earlier, when we were just having a chat, and we were talking about how the challenges in your life lead you to the next step, and looking back, it can be wonderful, but when you're in the thick of it, it's not that great. And that was my experience of motherhood, of going, whoa, what just happened? So, and my life kind of fell apart, and I had to rebuild it. But I think that my children were an incredible blessing in that way, and I only had 2 of them, so I can only imagine what it was like with you having 4.
Yes, as you say, things when you're in the thick of it, especially with young children, babies, young children, those first few years are tough. And I have 4 kids, as you say. I have an 8-year-old, Monaco, and then I have a 6-year-old, Bordeaux. And then I have a 5-year-old, Everest, and I have a 3-year-old. She is my only girl. Her name is Capri. And we have been, I've said this a few times, we have been looking for the light at the end of the tunnel for a while. And I am glad to say that we're at that stage now where we can see there is there's a glimmer. It's there. We know we can reach it, you know. We just got to stay the course and keep going. But yes, for us it was a very similar kind of experience as well. We had children late in life. I was just about to turn 35. So Monaco was born on the 22nd of October. My birthday is the 30th of October. So he was born when I was 34, just about to turn 35. Which is if you speak to any kind of fertility specialist, they'll call you geriatric. And yes, as a baby bearing person or mother, they see you at that age as being really old, because your eggs become older. And I understand the process very well, because for us it was a matter of very much being deliberate about whether we wanted to have children or not. For many years, Carl and I were enjoying just being married couple without children and doing the things that you do, you know, you do whatever your heart desires almost at that stage. We were, however, in a new country and making friends, and, you know, we had to find our feet. So a part of that stage of our lives between the age of 26 and 35, we were trying to work out where we fit into the Australian society and, you know, how things work and how can we start with careers and just rebuild our lives essentially. Well, build and rebuild, because we had both left South Africa. We'd left what we had there and we had to start from scratch again here. And we knew from pretty much the get-go that we would need to get fertility help if we wanted to have babies. So for those first few years, it wasn't a question for us of having to stress about getting pregnant, because we knew that it was pretty much not going to happen for us at all if we didn't get help. And then when we had really gone through thinking about whether we did want to have children or not, and we took our time very well to think about it, we decided that if we were going to say yes, that we did want to have 4 if we could. But now knowing that at that stage that we have to have fertility IVF, and we had to have the most advanced version of IVF, you get different levels. And for us, it was just a matter of, okay, when would be the best time then for us to start this journey of starting with a family? And if you wanted to have 4 and we were already doing IVF, it was like, whoa, we'd probably be better start as soon as we can. But Carl was doing his MBA and I was doing my PhD at that point in time. So we decided we'll finish our study babies. And as soon as we finish our study babies, then we'll start with our real life babies. And that's what we did. So in my final year of my PhD, I knew I was going to submit my thesis at the end of that year. We pretty much decided to start with the IVF journey. And through lots of trials and tribulations, we were just extremely blessed to then eventually get our 4 babies. And yes, it has been extremely testing in a new country, not having the kind of support that we would have had, and it would be the same for you because you left your family and your structures and everything that you had, and you moved to a new country, and now suddenly you're having your life is changing upside down because you're having little kids, little human beings that you're responsible for. And you don't necessarily have the support that you might have had you stayed in your original or your home country. But as you say, Chamonix, it's been the biggest blessings of our lives for us. I think about it often, how it might have been, how life would have been different for us if we didn't have children. And it would have been certainly easier in many aspects, but it would have been definitely less dimensional. Now that we have children, they've given us another dimension to life. It gives us an opportunity to appreciate and experience life so much more full or in depth. I don't know how else. To me, it's like having another dimension. So,
yeah, it's like it gives you the opportunity to meet more aspects of yourself and just go so much deeper into the experience of life. Yeah.
But yes, it's it's hard work, and there's a lot of times that you question yourself and you think, as a parent, am I doing the right thing? Yes or no? It's woof. Am I, should I let them have this another lolly or not? Or, what time is a good time to go to bed? Sometimes the answer is as soon as possible or as early as possible, so mum and dad can have a breather. So from that sort of really deep topic, because it is a deep topic, but it's such an important one for women parents of our age, where we are going through this. You and I have also decided to run businesses in our own accords. And I would love for you to share with us what you do, Chamonix. And you are also known as Cha, so you go by the short version of Chamonix. And why did you decide to use Cha and not Chamonix? And then please share with us what you do every day that keeps you moving.
Well, the Cha mostly came from a lifetime of people not knowing how to say my name, if they were English speaking. And because I grew up in France, them kind of like making jokes about like, well, why were you called that? And, why didn't your parents call you? And then they'd kind of list off some other ski resort. And every single time I met someone, there was some sort of like, either I had to tell them the whole story, or they had jokes about my name. And one of my best friends called me Cha, and I just went, that's easier. So it got to a point where I would meet people and they would always ask, is it Charlene or, and I would just say no and then just move on. It just kind of made that, it's just tiring to have the same conversation over and over again. And I kind of just got used to the ease of not having to explain my name, which was quite freeing after 20 years of living in France, and that consistency of people not understanding why you have an original name, because it's very un-French to have a name. Well, not so much in the younger generations, but definitely when I was growing up in France, we were more in rural areas where people tended to just have their grandparents' name or their parents' name. There was never anything original about it. So that's why I shortened it, and it just was easier, and people didn't make typos in my name, and, much easier.
So Cha, not Cha, because some people refer to me as Cha, C-H-A, Cha.
Well, I get called Cha, or I'm really not precious about it. I know some people are very adamant that you have to pronounce their name correctly. I just give people some grace to, as long as you're looking at me and talking to me politely, and you kind of say something that's close enough to my name, I'm okay with that.
Right, so tell me about your business.
Well, my business is called the Soul Strategist. And ultimately what I do is I help people get out of their own way, and I help them come back to who they truly are. So that's pretty much the very shortened story, but there's so many different layers to our experience that make us into the versions of ourselves that we show to the world. And I think that often there's, we all have our own version of trauma and our things that we're not too willing to show the world, because at some point in time we've been either shamed for it or we've been told that we're wrong to be the way that we are. So we hide away behind these masks that we show the rest of the world. And what I know to be true is that underneath all of those masks, everyone is so incredibly different and so unique and absolutely magnificent. So what I do is I help people figure out who they are through making their way through who they're not. So I kind of explain that as I'm a transformation mentor, I coach people, but I also teach leadership in a way that's not managing other people, but rather really standing in who you are. And I didn't come up with this term, but I heard it recently and I thought it was beautiful, like leading from the middle. So leading from the middle of who you are, but also not trying to be above anybody else, but just being so anchored into your authenticity that you give other people permission to do the same. So I teach that through workshops and keynotes and corporate trainings and retreats and women's circles. And, what I do is very anchored in spirituality, but not in any particular religion or particular set of rules, but really that connection to yourself. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I work one-on-one with people and with groups, and ultimately, and I think this is where we come together on this, Chamonix, is that we want to make the world a better place. And the way we do that is to figure out exactly who we are and what our skills are. And then in my case, what I dedicate my time to is figuring out how to help people discover who they are and how that they can show up in the most beautiful way. So sometimes that looks like being the best boss you can be. Sometimes it looks like being the best mum you can be. Sometimes it's just being who you truly are unapologetically. But I think if everyone could do that, we would live in a much more easeful and beautiful and compassionate world. So that's kind of, I guess, when people ask me what I do, I always answer it differently. Sometimes I just say I'm a coach, or I'm a mentor, or I'm a healer. I'm a hypnotherapist.
But you're all of the above.
Exactly. And I think for so many people where it's very difficult to kind of pigeonhole yourself, because you're so many things at once, and you are that unique expression of life. And, if you know exactly, well, it's not exactly like knowing who you are, because I believe in any situation we move and change and we adapt, and we're constantly changing and moving. But if we can be really trusting and anchored into just being as authentic as we possibly can in any interaction, in any situation, then that's a beautiful gift to and a beautiful way to move through the world, I believe.
I 100% agree with you. And the advent of the internet is both a blessing and a curse as well, because we have things like Facebook, Instagram, and so on, where you always, not most of the time, only see this perfect version of a person. And it's really hard for somebody who is on the receiving end of that picture or that story or that video, looking at this perfect version of the person, to think that that's the way that they always are, and they always look pretty when they come out of bed, and their kids are always the most perfect children, and they never backchat their parents, and it's like so that's the bad version of the internet. But the good version of the internet is the fact that it's given people like you and me a vehicle to reach other people.
Yeah.
And by trying to be authentic in our own way, well, firstly, teaching other people to be authentic, but then trying to prove that by living it and showing that ourselves authentically, but also vulnerably, that makes the internet a very powerful tool. And I'm so thankful for the internet that we do have this, so that we can reach people, firstly, anywhere in the world, secondly, at any time of the day, of night that it suits us, and thirdly, costs a fraction for us to, you know, go online and share essentially our story with whoever wants to watch this, like whoever's watching it at the moment. If you're watching it, it didn't cost you a cent to see this. It's all free for you to see. So yeah, it's great what you do in how you are out there teaching people to believe in themselves and to believe in trusting that gut and who they are. And there's a beauty in that, because how bloody boring would it be if we were all going to be exactly the same? Hey, what would be the point of having a conversation like this, of having anything else, if we were just all this going to be this cookie cutter? I really I really do not like being a sheep. For me, the sheep is, I'll be the sheep with the pink clothes on or the orange, or you know, make your pick. But for me, that's the most boring thought. The last thing I want to be thinking about if I'm on my deathbed one day is, oh, you know what, I just towed the line and I just looked like everybody else and did everything that like, no, I'm out there, I'm like questioning the status quo. If somebody says to me, the rule is this, I'll say, but why is that the rule? I'll ask the questions. And then if they say, but it's always been like that, I'll say, great, now is a wonderful opportunity for us to revisit that rule and see if it's still really necessary and valid. And just being brave and being yourself, it just colors life in so much more. I mean, look at you sitting there in your beautiful outfit with your backdrop, and it looks very different to mine. Can you imagine if we were both just having black clothes on with a black backdrop and our hair looked the same? Funny enough, we should have the same names, eh? That's not a very usual thing to have the same names for somebody called Chamonix. But yes, I just think it's incredible what you do, and I want to thank you and just give you some kudos for what you're doing, because you're swimming upstream, really. You're swimming in a world where the world teaches you, oh, we got to all conform to this and look the same, and this is the magazine with the clothes that you got to be wearing on Tuesday and on Wednesday and on Friday, almost like that. And you're saying, no, but wait a minute, I can choose who I want to be, and I can still live a great life.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think that everyone's got a very specific gift. And if we're not sharing that gift, we're not doing any favors. Like, it would be quite selfish to have a gift and refuse to share it with other people. And everyone has one. Like, often people will look at someone, you know, like ourselves, we've got platforms where we share, but every single person that I've come across, every single person that I've worked with has a very specific, authentic gift. And often they don't even realize that it's a gift, because it comes so naturally to them that they make the assumption that everybody's like that or everyone can do that. And it's mind-blowing to me, because my particular gift is being able to see the truth in people. And even some people where I've found them initially to be quite abrasive, when I actually dig deeper and see the truth of who they are on that really authentic, essential level, they are incredible, absolutely incredible, and so unique that, I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer that, you know, everyone should do that work to uncover who they truly are. But what I know is that we hide who we are because we've been hurt. And it takes so much courage to actually go and look at all of those parts of us that are hurting and heal all of that and be okay and with accepting everything that we have experienced and accepting the world as it is and choosing to just show up. That takes a lot of courage, but I think we're the same in the sense that we're just like, we're showing up to show people that you actually can. Like, it's not, you know, life's not a walk in the park, but it can be absolutely incredible. But it takes being brave, and it takes being vulnerable and being okay with being messy. And, you know, it's not always going to be this perfect kind of fairy tale story, but that's why it's interesting.
Exactly. Who wants to have a boring life? I mean, we only have one go at it. You might as well, you know, enjoy it. And as you
And
say,
no one's making it out alive. That's the whole point. Really.
exactly. One thing is certain. Well, two, death and taxes, but we'll ignore the taxes. At least in Australia, we can see where our tax money go, you know? Talking about the business and the family life, doing what you do, and my situation is the same for Chamonix TV, is that it's a flexible kind of business that we have chosen. How has being your own boss, being an entrepreneur, influenced your family life, and how do you juggle motherhood around doing the things that a mum has to do, and also coming and showing up for your members, your viewers, the people who follow you?
I think it's just I'm very anchored into why I do what I do. I don't do this because it's my job. I don't do it because I've built this business. I do it because it's just like there's this impulse in me that is driving me, like this deep sense of purpose that's driving me. So I've, you know, what I share is not necessarily like I teach people, but I'm not always showing up as the teacher. I'm showing up as the student as well, because I know that what I have to share and what I have to teach people is going to be of value to them. That's kind of what, like this deep passion that drives me, but also it doesn't have to be perfect. What I really aspire to do is to inspire the next person to lean in and to be okay with life being messy and vulnerable. I don't show up always in a very polished way with a very specific strategy and purpose. I'm very strategic in how I work, but I'm very intuitive in how I show up. So it was a process of trial and error to figure out how my business gets to be part of my life, rather than, you know, me being the slave of my business. And I think that as women particularly, we tend to get into business because we believe in something, because we want to create something. There's a much deeper sense of purpose. It's not just about making money. It's a really, like, we're anchored in something a lot deeper. But we can often fall into the trap of doing business in a way that we've seen other people do business, because we believe that's how business is done, and that's the only way I'm going to succeed, is to do it like this other person's done. But in my experience, it's, you know, it always comes back to authenticity. It's like, well, who are you? What do you have to share? How can you make this work in a way that nobody can do in that way? Nobody can teach you how to be you.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out how to be you, then everything else kind of flows from there. So it's not about me, you know, like my business is not something that I do as a job. It's like, it's everything that I am. It's everything that I do. Like I believe really in living life in a really intentional way. So every opportunity and every interaction is part of exactly what I do for work. Like it's, you know, I think that it comes down to that presence. Like if you can be really authentic and really present, then it's not just when, you know, you hit play and you record something to share with people. It's like, it's in every interaction that you are fully embodying what you believe in and what you aspire to do. And that's what you know, I'm not saying I get this perfectly. Like I'm not the perfect mum by any means whatsoever, but I do believe that I'm a pretty good mum, because I aspire to teach my children to think for themselves, to think creatively, and to kind of trust that they actually know themselves, and to not listen to the outside world that gets in the way. But I think there's a lot of talk about work-life balance. I don't think that there is any such thing as work-life balance. I think it's just a question of boundaries. And when we're really truly confident in who we are and really authentic, boundaries become like, just when we're authentic like that, life and work balance becomes just a question of boundaries, and what we're willing to do for our family and what we're willing to do for work, and how they kind of meet and move together.
Yeah.
But But yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And that's been the same for you. You know, I turned 40 essentially before I found what it is that I really wanted to do with my life, essentially. I'm a kind of person I'm multi-passionate. Like, I can be interested in many things at any point in time. And it's always been like this through school and after that, where I've never been the person who was only like good in one thing and then I was the best in the country in that. It wasn't like that. I was more a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So I participated in everything. I would do all everything that was at school that was available, I would participate in. So I would do all the sports. I would obviously, I had no choice to participate in academics, so I did that as well. But I was never the dox of the school, was never the top student, but I did okay academically. And I was never the top sports girl, but I participated and I got sort of somewhere in most of the sports and culture and things like that. So that's really still, in a way, the kind of person that I am. I am easily interested in many things. I think there's a beauty in that too, and I'm very thankful for that, because it makes me have a very broad foundation or a basis. And I have also then subsequently studied a whole bunch of different things. And I have worked in so many different industries. And this, I didn't leave school knowing, oh, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. It wasn't like that for me. I was always like, oh, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what to do. But there was a number of things that I would have perfectly easily been able to do. And so I dabbled a bit in this and a bit in that and studied different things. I completed everything I studied. I have to say that too. It's not like I started and stopped. I did complete my studies, but still it was a variety of things, from fashion design. I've got a diploma in fashion design, through to, I want to say, boring things like, well, what would be boring? IT. For some people, I've got my PhD in business information systems, which is, fashion design and IT is total different spectrums. And then it wasn't until I turned about 40, which is coincidentally when some people have midlife crises. I didn't see it. I didn't go through a crisis as such specifically, but at that stage, I had been working in Parliament House in Canberra and in Perth, and I had to fly. I was chief of staff for senator and senior advisor as well subsequently. And that meant spending many days and weeks away from my family, who was in Perth, and I had to travel to Canberra to be in the Australian Parliament House for that. And I just got to a stage where I decided, now that I'm having little children, this is not the kind of life that I want to live. I don't want to be away from my family all this time. And I decided I'm going to reinvent myself. And so I went through this whole journey of pretty much what you're teaching now, is trying to figure out, who am I? What do I enjoy doing? What will give meaning to my life? And what am I good in? And can I sort of find the middle ground of all these things, where it would make the most sense for me to spend my time? Things I'm passionate about, things that work for my kind of family setup, work-life balance that I would like to achieve, and things that I can meaningfully contribute to other people's lives. That question of, I won't say the question, but like that deeper meaning of things. I really wanted to not just have a job where I was a pin pusher or something like that. For me, I get extreme sense of fulfillment by helping other people.
Yeah.
And
have you come across the concept of ikigai? Have you come across that word?
You should please tell us.
So ikigai is a Japanese word, and it means the intersection of, it's basically like finding your purpose is the intersection of what you're good at, what you love to do, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And it's like all of these things matter, but where they intersect is your specific purpose. And it's a beautiful kind of way to make sense. It's a very simplistic way. I think it's kind of like that first step when you're trying to figure out your purpose. But it's beautifully simple.
And And I went through this journey of trying to work out how that would work for me. And at the same time, I had just finished my PhD 2 or 3 years before that, which was in skill shortages, IT and skill shortages, a combination of the two. And I had been invited to speak on Sky News a couple of times on the topic of immigration. And I had so many people contacting me, asking me to help them, how, what can they do to come to Australia and what the process involves. And I then decided to create this group called I Want to Move to Australia, I Want to Migrate to Australia on Facebook. And that group just started growing organically. I want to say it exploded, maybe not exploded because it's still there, it's still functioning, but it just took off so much. And I had a lot of experience talking publicly and being prepared to share a bit authentically things in my life, my journey, and so on. I've had a YouTube channel at that point in time for a while as well, where I've been talking about being a local government councillor, because that was another role that I did as well. And so all of these things sort of came together for me, and I just realized, wow, well, this is it. This is like I can meet all of those needs by doing this, what has sort of come my way in a way. And if I look at everything that I'd done before this, remember how I just said I have such a broad background. I did so many varied things, master of jack of trades, of all trades, but a master of none. All of those little bits and pieces that I've done in the past, whether it's something I studied or some industry I worked in, all of those experiences culminated and contributed to me actually finally being in this position that I am in, where I could create Chamonix TV and serve wonderful folk who would love to move to Australia. So yes, oftentimes when I was studying a new thing, and I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I don't like, or when I got a new job and it's like totally in a different line, or something at that point was like maybe a hard experience that I was going through, but I learned through it in the other. Now I can look back at those things and I know, wow, they actually all of them in some way contributed to me being here and now, and being able to provide, give back what I hope to be able to give back, and that's by helping other people have a better life. And if I can change but one life, even if it's just a little bit, and make it that little bit better, to me gives me immense satisfaction. And just, no money in the world can buy that feeling of changing somebody's life.
Yeah. But I think just one point that I've noticed a lot of people, like, I really believe that what we're here to do in this life is to kind of be of service to the collective. But often people will sacrifice themselves in order to be of service. And I think that it's the other way around. It's by fully realizing who you truly are that you are actually of best service to the world, not by sacrificing yourself and, forgetting who you are to,
because then you lose
serve others,
aspect.
But rather that journey of.
Sorry, I interrupted you. It's difficult with the internet, because in a normal conversation I would be like just, but I was just saying, yes, if you do that, then you actually lose who you are, and you lose that specific gift that you have, and you're diluting your whole message. So sorry, continue, Chamonix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the service is actually, like, it seems counterintuitive, but it is essentially self-realization. And coming home to our truth is our greatest service to others, which, I think people often learn when they have found their purpose, and then they burn out from living their purpose, because it seems a little bit too easy. We kind of feel like life's meant to be hard and we're supposed to work too hard. But honestly, when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't drain you. It actually gives you that energy. So yeah.
And since I started doing Chamonix TV, there has not been a single day that I've gotten up and gone to work where it's felt like I've been working. It's like you cannot stop the fire in me, like the drive, the want, the need. I am feeding off it as much internally by doing this as what I hope I'm being able to contribute to somebody else's life and making a difference to them. But yes, 100%, you gotta, it's very tricky, but you gotta keep your authenticity in place, be true to that while driving your purpose of serving the people that you serve. Because if you're going to cookie cutter yourself and go into that box, what's the point? They might as well just buy a book off the shelf and go and read that from somebody else, and go, because then we're not showing up the way that we are supposed to. I want to move the conversation a little bit into traveling with a little family, and how, firstly, you have traveled in Australia, I know. So I want to know how you have found traveling on a long term with your little kids, with you in car, the many thousands of kilometers, and whether you've learned anything through that, either of who you are yourself as a person, or something about your family. And yes,
I learned to let go a lot on that trip. We traveled 5,000 kilometers with 2 kids in the back and a dog in the middle. So yeah, that was, I guess, a challenge within itself. The kids, and they bicker all the time, and they just want to play video games when you're like, no, just look out the window and enjoy. I wish I had, any advice or great insights, but I think it really comes down to everyone's family is completely different. And having the opportunity to spend that time with your family in really close quarters, it does create a closeness that I don't think we can replicate in other ways. So for me as a child, I experienced that when we left South Africa. I was 2 years old. I had my 2 brothers and my parents, and we left on a boat. And for about 18 months, we traveled as this really little close-knit family. And it made me, I'm sure we probably argued all the time, but as siblings, it made us so incredibly close. And it's that kind of that bond that we created in that time, we've carried throughout our lives. And I hope that in a way I've been able to gift that to my children by traveling with them as well, even though they were, arguing about this and that. And there was actually a closeness that took place, and also I don't think it would have been the same to move here where we are if we just hopped on a plane and come here. I think that progression and that being together through that, crossing the land was very much like an initiation type, it was a journey. Whereas if you just hop on a plane and go somewhere, it's too fast, it's too clear cut, and you don't really have that unraveling and becoming experience that comes with change. So I think that progression for us doing the road trip was so much more transformative than if we'd just flown. And I don't know, I think it was a massive trip, but it was also possibly, sorry in saying this, possibly the most boring part of Australia, because it was 5,000 kilometers, but it was very much the same thing. Whereas now, if we were looking at finishing the loop and going all the way down the East Coast and back up, that would be a lot more interesting. And my husband really wants to do that. So the plan at this stage is to spend a couple of years here and then return to WA. We'll see if that actually pans out in that way, or if we'll have another change that takes us somewhere else. But going around the other way, I think will maybe be a little bit more interesting, and hopefully just will bring us closer again.
It is an incredible journey to take, especially with very young kids like that. where sitting still is a swear word for them. If they're anything like my kids. So
Yep.
yeah, 5 minutes max. That's about the amount of time we can get out of my kids sitting still, except if you give them an iPad and some lollies, you know, you might like stretch it a little bit, but that's about, yeah, I think like 30 minutes. If you're really pushing it, then it's like, Mum, I need to move. You know, it's like their body's just, and they need to wriggle about. So yeah, so we did, as I think, as you know, we did the whole loop around Australia. We started in Perth and then went up clockwise all around and came back. And we did that a year and a half ago. We finished that trip. It took us 4 months to travel right around Australia in a motorhome. My daughter was 1 at the time, one and a half. And our oldest son was, well, so 2 years ago. So he was 6 at the time. So he was year 1. And the first question I usually get is, did I homeschool them while we were doing this? And my answer is no, absolutely not. Because when we decided to do this trip, we very deliberately decided not to go down the journey of homeschooling. It wasn't our intention to try and replicate what they would learn at school on the road. That was not what we wanted to do. We very much wanted them to learn as we go, just enjoy and just let life happen, essentially. And children are intrinsically like sponges. They are very interested in knowing things and about learning.
Yeah.
And so if you put them in situations that they are experiencing like in real life, the learning that comes from that is just so much more than the learning that you could ever try and push onto them when they're in a classroom sitting down with a textbook. It's just so different. They experience things.
Yeah, we can't force curiosity.
Exactly. And that's what we wanted to do. We just wanted to let life happen. So let learning happen. While we traveled around Australia, we got permission from the school. We told them beforehand that we were intending to drive around Australia, and that they said this was the last term of Monaco was year 1. And the school said that they would be happy with Monaco and Bordeaux, who was then in prep at that stage, that we would leave at the end of term 3, but when we returned at the term 1 for the next year, that the school would be happy for them to come into the next year's grade, and they wouldn't keep them back because they had missed the last part of school. And we're very grateful for the school, for the principal, in allowing us to do that, because that gave us peace of mind that we'll be okay. You know, it's not like we're going to lose 2 years. And then, so we traveled around Australia with our kids, letting go of anything learning wise, except if our children would ask us about things, or we were doing something and they're curious and it's like, oh, Mummy, what's this? Or we would see a dolphin and then we'll talk about dolphins, or we'll pay at the gas station, we'll pay for an ice cream or whatever it is. It's like, look, this is $5. And now we need to go to the person and hand them the $5, and then they hand you the ice cream. And that's a massive learning curve. And the amount of learning that happened for our children in that trip, even though they were so young, to this day, they can still remember those things. And I'm dumbstruck when they say to me, oh, Mum, can you remember when we were on our trip, we did this thing or that thing? And I mean, they were 1, 3, 5, 4, 5, and 6, or something like that. 1, 3, 5, and 6. Anyway, they were like, usually you don't remember things from that young age. So we learned that, and I know this from having studied, I did a couple of master's degrees in education, in tertiary education, learning about why people learn and how people learn, knowing that you learn with motivation so much better than when you try and push education onto somebody. So we just experienced that firsthand, and ever since was just so interested, once we completed our travels, to ideally want to be able to offer our children an environment where they could continue learning where interest and curiosity comes first and the learning comes after that, as opposed to where they are taught this is what you got to learn and this is the box that you only have this window, and then if this period is finished, then you've got to move along because now we're going to do maths, and then there's this period of maths that you got to do, and then move along, and now it's biology or whatever it is that the subjects are. And so that was the first thing that we learned. The second thing that we learned was that home for us is not a physical building or a place as such. Home for us is where we are together as a family, and where we can provide our children a sense of belonging, which is not linked to a physical place or structure, but to the unit of us as a family. And it didn't matter where we were in Australia, traveling in that motorhome. At no point did I feel like I wasn't at home. And I think our children felt the same. They always had that sense of belonging. There was no unsettledness per se. We didn't it wasn't like that we took the kids out of our house and plonked them somewhere and then they were just set. They were just happy and easy because we were there as a unit together. And I like to think that we provide that definition of home by being together as a unit. Anyway, so that's my long story about what we've learned about traveling around Australia or traveling for long periods of time. I have a question for you, Chamonix. If money and visas were no issue, where in the world would you like to raise your kids or continue to raise them?
There are a lot of places in the world that I don't know, so I can only go on what I do know. And I think that where we are here, or at least where we are here, is beautiful, but it in some ways, there's crocodiles. So I think Perth is when I gave birth to my son in Perth, I remember thinking this is possibly one of the best places in the world to grow up, because it is where we lived was, we weren't in the CBD or, we were close to the river, close to the beach, in a lovely kind of residential area. It was, the kind of environments that we can have in Australia. So possibly not Perth, but maybe somewhere a little bit slightly more rural would be ideal. I think for different stages of life call for different places, but for young children, I think being able to run at the beach and jump in the waves and be able to walk to work and be surrounded by, community, but nature as well, is absolutely ideal. Absolutely ideal. And not, where we are now, it's a small town, but it's very community orientated. And there's a lot of sport, there's a lot of, lot of connection between people, and it's quite, it's quite safe to let your kids just kind of walk around and be outside. And I think that is ideal, being able to have your kids play outside your home, next to the street without worrying that a car's going to go past and either shoot them or snatch them or, I find that quite incredible, because, as we enter into parenthood, our nervous system just goes boom, and we're stressed about everything, because everything's a potential danger to this tiny child that could choke on something or, pull something on top of themselves, or anything could happen. But being in a place where we actually can be really connected to the earth, to each other, and grow our children in that type of environment, I believe is really beautiful. It's a privilege, and it's not one that I will ever take for granted. I mean, especially I think we share that, coming from South Africa, what it can be like to be in those countries. And, South Africa's probably not the worst place in the world. There are some awful places in the world where, just every day is a dangerous day. Being in this part of the world where it's sunny, it's beautiful, it's safe, there's, you can jump in the ocean and have your feet on the ground and breathe in fresh air. That's a beautiful blessing that, I'm happy to be able to raise my children in this country and this part of the world.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more. I have the same answer in the sense that if money and visas were no problem, I would still continue to raise my children in Australia. Good. If I had a magic ball and I could say, how the future is going to look, obviously that would determine a lot about what one would like to do in the future. However, with the knowledge that I have at this point in time and the world being what it is, we've had this pandemic behind us. Well, it's probably still part of life. We've just learned to live with it. And with wars raging in places in other parts of the world, I think Australia is probably one of the safest bets that we can go for both a health kind of pandemic, health scares, health safety, and in terms of war. Doesn't mean nothing is going to happen here. Of course, we're not immune to what happens in the rest of the world, and we do feel it. Even through not sanctions, but through rise of cost of living and things rising. But the freedom that comes along with this country and the fairness in Australia compared to what we're used to and what I've learned happens or does not happen in so many other countries, I think we are extremely blessed to have that. And Australia is also quite forward thinking in many aspects. In many ways, we have very traditional thinking, but in many aspects, we are forward thinking. And you mentioned the way that they were designing buildings already when, in your 20s, when you decided to come to Australia, you were already looking to Australia for that forward thinking. And I'm experiencing a lot of forward thinking in Australia's education system at the moment. Some select pockets are prepared to drive, and my children are now in a school where it's non-traditional. We're not in a normal curriculum. They follow that thing that I was just talking about while we were traveling, and how you want your children, or I want my children, to learn with curiosity at the forefront and then learning to follow automatically after that. We have managed to find a school where that is the principle, and where the learning is tailored to the child. The child is not tailored to the learning, which is very different. So I think Australia is incredible for that. But what we would actually really like to do is to be able to, at some point, take our children and travel around the world, but not on a holiday. Travel around the world in a meaningful way, where we can take our children and have them experience different cultures, not in the tourist spots, in the cultural set, like where the rest of those people are actually living the true, let's say in South America, I want to go to Brazil, where Brazilians live like Brazilians live, not in the middle of Rio de Janeiro where it's like just touristy. And spend an extended period of time at select points where we decide we want to go to. Yes, we want to go to the States. I definitely want to go to the States. I want to go to Canada. So I want to go to the first world countries, of course, but I do want to go to those other kind of countries who speak different languages to what we speak, who look different to what we look, who eat different food to what we eat, and let our children just take it in, not force it, take it in, let life happen. But the difference in Chamonix is we now have the passport of Australia. And I would never have been able to do this financially. If I was living in South Africa, we would never be able to afford to travel around the world like that, because the rand versus the dollar is just very different. But secondly, your passport, your Australian passport, just allows you so much more entry into other countries, unrestricted entry or less restrictive entry. And thirdly, this is the most important part, we'll always be able to return to Australia. And by knowing that you will always have that home, Australia is our home, we can always return to Australia, would make the travels not stressful, because you know we will be coming back. And we just want to do it for like, 4 or 5 years, something like that, with the kids, travel around, similar to what you did with your parents when you were on the boat from South Africa up to Europe, just experience life together. Okay.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment.
Yes, hopefully we can. And that was the other thing. We still need to go and see, our kids are named after all these places: Monaco, Bordeaux, Everest, and Capri. And we've only been to Monaco. So we still got to make a plan to go and see Bordeaux. I want to say climb Everest. Maybe we won't climb it to the top, but, at least attempt maybe a few steps up.
Yeah.
And then go to Capri. Just to sort of finish our conversation here, it's been so fabulous to chat to you and hear more about your journey and your life. And I really find it fascinating how very different, but how so similar it is what you and I have been experiencing through this thing called life. These businesses that we run can be classified in a way, I guess, or some people might call it an influencer business, because both you and I have channels or platforms where we talk to other people and we provide them with information or advice. And so we influence other people's lives, essentially, whether, they can choose if they want us to do that or not, of course. But with this comes quite a few pros and cons. And I was wondering what your take has been on being on a platform like this, where, you're pretty much out there and you're up for, somebody wants to shoot you with a target, they can go and the trolls can have a big go at you. How have you been weathering those kinds of things that come your way as an entrepreneur on such an open platform?
Well, I think for me, it's an incredible privilege to have a platform, and whatever it comes with is, the thing is, I feel like I haven't really been attacked by many people because it's not something that scares me at all. It's not something that I'm afraid of. Therefore, it's not something that I have resistance to, and therefore it's not really been my experience all that much. I don't need people to like me. That hasn't always been the case, by the way, but at this stage of my life, I don't need people to agree with me. I don't need them to like me. I know that I have the right to express my opinions, and I always do it with with compassion and with, I guess, respect. I don't expect people to necessarily agree with me, but then that gives us something to talk about. And I know that if anyone does disagree with me, I'm curious to understand why. Is there something that I can learn from that, or is there something that we can kind of bounce off each other to figure out, what is the issue with what I'm saying? And maybe it's something that I can have the opportunity to have a look at within myself. If I'm offending someone in any way, then maybe I'm willing to be challenged, I guess. So therefore, because I'm very willing to be challenged, people generally don't challenge me because what I say tends to make sense. Yeah. And it's delivered in a way that is just very honest and authentic. So I've found personally that people don't actually attack me for being who I am. Because I'm just being who I am. I'm not telling anybody else that they should be like me. I'm just saying, this is what I'm doing. Do you think this could help you? If it does, take it on. If it doesn't, don't. I always tell people, take what works for you and just leave the rest. It's fine. It's like a buffet. Here's my information. Here's what I teach, and here's what I've learned, and here's what I believe. Take what you like. And if there's something that doesn't look appealing to you, leave it. You may want to taste it one day, but if that's not today, that's okay with me.
Yes, no, it's very true what you say. You're out there offering your advice or your tips or your experience, and if somebody doesn't like it, it's up to them to use it or not use it. What I really enjoy about what you do, and this is something that I really focus on and try to teach my kids as well, is to not try and find your value in somebody else's opinion. You need to be you need to be happy with who you are and find that self-worth within yourself, not on somebody else, not on the number of likes that you get or in somebody else's opinion of you. It's not easy. Hey, we're grown up, we're brought up in a life where we're taught to just fit into this society, into this group, and to fit into this group you gotta like do like they do and be like they are so that you are accepted. And I know we're human beings, we're intended to be together, so we need to fit in with each other in some shape or form, but it doesn't mean you have to fit in with everybody in every way. And so just finding that comfort in who you are and accepting that is okay to feel the way that you feel and like things in a different way than what somebody else might like it is important. So as a person that's on a platform like you are, and me as well, is if there is somebody that comes past and they don't like it, that's okay too, but also that makes life interesting, as you say, and I want to bring it on. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear it, because I have actually changed my mind in the past on several rather big things for me, which was big ticket things. And if somebody else didn't share with me their information and their point of view, I would not have had that opportunity to take that extra information into consideration. And my husband always says, well, why have a mind if you can't change it, you know?
But I think for me, what it comes down to is that I know that no matter what your perspective and no matter what you believe, when you're having a conversation with someone, you can both be right and you can both be wrong at the same time. And just believing that you're right and someone else is wrong is like, you're not learning anything if you're trying to make somebody else wrong.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've found that when we don't have fear and we don't have resistance, we don't get attacked. I believe that because it's been my experience. I've been in business for probably about 8 years now, and I can probably count on the fingers of one hand people who've actually had a go at me. And it's because I think it just comes down to worthiness. Like if you absolutely know with every cell of your body that you're worthy, then other people not liking you, it doesn't hurt. It only hurts when it actually points at some kind of wound within ourselves. So I think when it hurts, it's an opportunity to kind of go like, oh, well, what part of me is not okay with who I am? Yeah. Because otherwise it wouldn't matter.
It comes back to that point of it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So that's maybe an opportunity to open up your eyes to say, what is there in your, as you say, that you still need to go and work on within yourself to make it okay. Yes, I really like how you're framing it. And it's just such an interesting journey that we've been on, and still learning so much about ourselves. I don't know about you, but I still learn about myself every day. And grow as well. I do grow, and at no stage in life do I ever claim to be perfect, or in fact, like there's a lot of things that I can certainly do better in my life. And one of them that I try and do my best is I try and do everything my best, but one of them that I really try hard at is to be the best mum that I can be for my children and the best wife I can be for my husband. So yes, definitely not perfect at that, and it's challenging often.
But that's all that anyone can ever expect of anybody else, is to just do their best. We can't do any more than that.
If you do your best, then you should be content that you gave it your all. And so sometimes you make mistakes, not mistakes, because at that point in time, it was the best thing that you could do at that, like if it was, but if it wasn't, then maybe go and revisit that point. But if you just do your best, then if it turns out to be something that is not the way you hoped it would happen after you've made the decision, then that's something to learn from. It's not say, oh, I didn't make a mistake. It's no, this was an opportunity to learn more and to grow more. So yeah, making mistakes, there's nothing really like a mistake. It's more about a learning opportunity and a growing opportunity is how I see it. And just embrace it and try and find the positives in all of those things that are not always feeling the best at that point in time, as they happen.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for your time. It's been great to have a chat and to catch up again with somebody that's very special to me, because I only know one other Chamonix. If anybody who's watching this knows another Chamonix, please let us know. We would love to find out where are more of us, and maybe we can do another video if we find another person. And it's fascinating.
Absolutely, that would be so much fun. We could start a club.
The Chamonix Club. Oh, that's funny. It's been great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and we would love to learn.
Thanks so much for the chat.
It's been great. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, that is shahhigginson.com, and that's where you'll find links to everything that I do. You can also find me on YouTube, the Soul Strategist or Shah Higginson, and I hang out a lot on Instagram. I like kind of just sharing little bits of my day on Instagram, Shah_Higginson. I find that people find me when they need me. So I just trust that this is another opportunity for people to go like, hey.
Well, we'll have your links down below the video anyway. So if anybody wants to get in touch with Chamonix, please do so. And otherwise, give us a like at the bottom if you enjoyed this very special episode, because it's not every day that you get two Chamonix in one room, even if it's a virtual room.
Yeah, and what a great chat to share with anyone from South Africa who's planning on coming to Australia.
I hope this has been a bit of encouragement, because yes, both of us come from South Africa, very, very different ways that we got to Australia in the end. But yes, just sharing authentically how we have journeyed here and how we treat life and how life treats us, but we decide how we want to, accept the way that life treats us, because you have a choice in how you let things affect you. But yes, if this has helped anybody in some shape or form, or you enjoyed watching this episode, please leave us a comment below, and we will see you same time and same place next week. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and that you have found some nuggets that you can take and just make your own. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And this is Everest. He has been kind enough to come and help Mummy do this video, the last bit of it as well. So if you have family and you want to come and live this incredible life in Australia, then make sure you do not miss joining Migration Made Easy, which is where we will help you just make so much more headway with your journey in coming to Australia, and you will learn everything you need to know from A to Z about making it over to this country. And we will support you and give you the information that you need to land your first Australian job sooner. All right, head over to chamonixtv.com.au/register, and we will notify you when the doors for Migration Made Easy opens again. It only opens a few times a year, and to know when that is, you'll need to be registered on our waitlist. All right, chamonixtv.com.au/waitlist is where you will get onto that notifications. All right, guys, I really appreciate you watching. And remember to make the best of the one life that you have and come and live in this incredible place that we call Australia. All right, see you next week. Bye.